tonight.
If it got to that point where they were actually confiscating people's weapons and stuff, it'd be a civil war.
I know, we're a bit hypocritical, right? Let's just acknowledge that out front.
And depending on what the results come out as, your relationship could end, right?
Yeah.
As U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo glad-handed with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today in Israel, his boss thought he'd throw in a surprise shift in American foreign policy, tweeting that the U.S. should recognize Israel's sovereignty over the disputed territory of the Golan Heights, which it first seized from Syria in 1967.
Thank you, Mike Pompeo. Thank you, President Trump. And thank you, America.
Venezuelan intelligence officers arrested Roberto Marrero, the chief of staff for opposition leader Juan Guaidó, the most serious threat yet against their attempt to wrest power from President Nicolas Maduro. Guaidó's spokesman says police planted weapons in Marrero's apartment. 2 days after a Turkish-born shooter killed 3 people in Utrecht, Dutch voters swung to the right, giving a fringe anti-immigrant party 12 seats in the Senate at the expense of the ruling coalition's majority. The timing likely helped Thierry Baudet's Forum for Democracy become the single biggest winner. While other candidates stopped campaigning out of respect, Baudet exploited the moment, blaming the country's immigration policies. The House Oversight Committee is calling on White House counsel to stop stonewalling its investigation into whether Jared Kushner violated federal records laws by using WhatsApp for official business. Chairman Elijah Cummings says Kushner's lawyer told the committee that the president's son-in-law does use WhatsApp to chat with foreign leaders. But since he sends screenshots to official email accounts, it's all okay. Kushner's lawyer today disputed the committee's story, saying he only said Kushner has, quote, numerous friends and contacts abroad. Less than a week after the Christchurch terrorist attack, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced sweeping reforms to that country's gun laws.
Every semi-automatic weapon used in the terrorist attack on Friday will be banned in this country.
New Zealand is also introducing a gun buyback plan that could cost as much as $140 million. Even though gun ownership is common in New Zealand, there's almost universal support for the ban, which Parliament is expected to make permanent in the next few weeks. That's in stark contrast to the US, where even small gun control measures run into fierce opposition.
This is temporary for about 2 months. They're remodeling our old office into a newer facility.
So they've got you cramped in here, huh?
Yeah.
From his tiny basement office, Bob Songer is making a big mess of things.
You want to introduce me?
Oh yeah, this is Deputy Bones here. Let me get him in full uniform. So it's kind of cool.
I see he's armed.
Yes. Yeah, all good deputies would be armed.
Uh-huh.
He's the sheriff of Klickitat County in southern Washington, and he's refusing to enforce a new gun control law, approved last fall by voters across the state, because he says it's unconstitutional.
Local law enforcement now fighting back in some cases.
His stance has made him a star on the right.
Now, Sheriff, good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
The new law, 1639, raises the age to purchase a semi-automatic rifle to 21, expands background checks, and adds new rules for the safe storage of firearms. Some of its provisions went into effect on January 1st. The rest start in July.
On a good day, maybe 30.
It'd be one thing if Songer was acting alone. But across the country, non-compliance has become the go-to response to gun control, with more than 100 counties across at least 7 states declaring themselves sanctuaries for gun rights. In Washington, more than 20 sheriffs are following Songer's lead.
Thinking rounds?
Yeah, how you doing, buddy?
Good to see you. Well, I really appreciate you doing what you're doing there in the fight for us. I really think that's great.
You bet.
Stepping up and doing the right thing. So
You don't mind him putting the county on the map, putting you guys out there?
not at all.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I appreciate it.
Well, thank
Doing
you.
the right thing, and I really feel that way.
Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Scott.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What gives you the right to decide what laws you want to, enforce and which ones you don't? I mean, you're a sheriff, but you have a responsibility to uphold the law, don't you?
Well, you do if the law is legal. If it's an illegal law, why would you enforce something that you believe in your heart is an illegal law? Even if it was a legal law, you have discretionary power. You're not required to make an arrest. And as sheriff, as an elected, only law enforcement official in the entire country that's elected by the people. The distinction to me is if it affects the Constitution.
In your interpretation?
Yeah, absolutely, in my opinion. And I fully realize that the governor and the attorney general has a different opinion.
They do not like your opinion.
I know they don't, and I don't like theirs.
1639 passed with 60% of the vote, much of it from cities like Seattle and Olympia. But in rural counties like Klickitat, it lost badly. People there see it as more evidence of liberal values crushing their way of life.
This one here is a coyote or cougar kill, where they ate most of it. And this one here got his eye poked out, and if you feel down there, you can feel where the eye socket was broke by a raven or an eagle or something that killed him while he was taking a nap.
Wow.
Bruce Davenport is a cattle rancher and a volunteer sheriff's deputy.
Here's the posse uniform.
He says regulations from Olympia have made it harder to protect his livestock.
This isn't real clean, but this is kind of my office. Here's some guns here, and the big guns are all locked up in the gun safe.
The actual provisions of 1639 probably would not affect you directly. You already have your guns pretty much locked up in a safe way.
Mm-hmm.
You're not under 21.
Mm-mm.
You already have background checks.
Yes.
So you would probably not really be directly affected by it.
No, probably we wouldn't. But you give them one gun, they're going to want all of them.
That's how you see that.
That's how I feel.
Attorney General Bob Ferguson thinks a lot of the backlash is bluster. In February, Ferguson sent a letter to every sheriff in the state, warning them their counties could be financially liable if they fail to uphold the law.
Given the statements by some local law enforcement officials like, hey, I'm not going to go bust into someone's home to check if their gun is stored safely. Well, no, the initiative doesn't require you to do it. It doesn't ask you to do that. Nothing about the initiative wants you to do that. So we thought, let's just clarify some of these things and let's just focus on what is the disagreement.
What we hear when we talk to some of these sheriffs, they say that they do have discretion, and they also say that they see this as unconstitutional. So why should they enforce something that they see as unconstitutional?
Well, that's convenient, the latter argument, right? If you personally believe something to be unconstitutional, therefore you don't enforce it. We've had a death penalty in our state for many, many years. I'm personally quite opposed to the death penalty, but my office helps defend death penalty convictions. To me, where I draw the line is what's discretionary and what's not. You will see in the state 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and 20-year-olds who can no longer purchase an AR-15. That's going to happen, period. You will see in the state enhanced background checks done for semi-automatic weapons, effective July 1. That's going to happen, period, full stop. If that means the state has to come in to perform those enhanced background checks, that's what you would see.
Back in Goldendale, Sheriff Songer is all the more popular for defying the state.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's a little bit of a feeling like, are we seeing the beginning of an insurrection? Is this a rebellion?
You would hope it wouldn't get to that, but I could almost guarantee you I would be risking deputies' lives to go confiscate firearms at some point. I mean, that would be, to me, if it got to that point where they were actually confiscating people's weapons and stuff, it'd be a civil war. There's no question in my mind there'd be a revolution.
California Governor Gavin Newsom has called off enforcing the death penalty while he's in office.
I cannot sign off on executing hundreds and hundreds of human beings, knowing that among them will be innocent human beings.
Newsom's move made national headlines.
Thank you so much.
Just as he did as mayor of San Francisco in 2004. when he gave out same-sex marriage licenses years before the Supreme Court legalized it.
It's, for me, just principle. It's about right and wrong.
The marriages were later declared void, but they may have helped build Newsom's profile as a progressive. We spoke to him on the other side of the country, in Brooklyn, about his growing role as a national leader of the resistance.
I watched a 2008 clip of you at Google talking about same-sex marriage, the Loving case, and basically you're making a case that asking the public about stuff can often be not very conducive to change.
Yeah, in 1967, the year of my birth, blacks couldn't marry whites in this country. The overwhelming majority, one public opinion poll, 70% of Americans opposed interracial marriage until a guy named Richard Loving had the courage to stand on his convictions and fought it and ultimately spent time in the Supreme Court where that was overturned. Look, the point is you can play in the margin, we can continue to sort of process in traditional ways, or we can challenge people. I mean, if I wanted to do what the people of California said we should do a couple years ago, that'd be literally every single day executing someone for the next 2 years or once a week for the next 14 years. And in doing so, unquestionably, we would be executing people in a premeditated manner that were found innocent later, or in the process of executing others, we find were innocent.
I feel like the obvious question is, the voters of your state have been asked about this a couple times, and they have said every time they want to keep the death penalty. How do you convince people to come along with you and get on board with this?
You got to follow your moral compass, and you got to know what direction it's in, and then you've got to be able to sort of advance that morality and argue for the rightness of it. It's not easy, but that's what I'm elected to do. I don't think people want me just to put my finger in the wind. They didn't elect me just to go with public opinion. Otherwise, you literally could have a computer bot do that and decide on a moment-to-moment basis where the majority of Americans are and what majority of constituency.
We shift gears a bit to just talk about politics a little bit. There's a lot of questions right now about sort of what a Democrat is. Does the governor of California know what a Democrat is?
I don't know. We're different grays of blue, different grays of progressive, liberal. I don't. Social. I mean,
does socialist count? Is that part of it?
Yeah, why not? I don't know. I mean, is Medicare socialism, Medicaid socialism? There's a VA. I mean, I don't know. It's just whatever your brand is. Look, there's a passion, there's a sense of purpose and conviction now, and authenticity I haven't seen in our party in a long time. The biggest risk in life is not we aim too high and miss it. So we aim too low and reach it. So I like the audacity of some of the new up and coming leaders. At the same time, there's a point of caution. You should also learn from the pros, the folks that actually know how to translate that passion into practice.
Do you think Democrats could nominate somebody too far left? Is that a possibility?
I don't know what that means. I mean, when people look at universal health care and they say that's an extreme position, except it's shared by the overwhelming majority of Americans. When they say we need to be exponentially more aggressive on climate issues, that's shared by the vast majority of Americans. So I don't know what left means anymore. No, the answer is no. I don't subscribe to that point of view. I think it's complete nonsense.
Okay.
I mean, utterly made up. I really do.
Okay.
Because if you look at where the American people are and you look at that left agenda, it seems almost mainstream.
What's your relationship like with the president? How do you get along with Donald Trump?
It depends on the day of the week. When he came out to Paradise, when he visited the survivors and he visited the victims, I was inspired by his willingness to come out and his commitment to spend time with them, and I was very gratified by that. In that relationship, in that space, it's a very good relationship. But when it comes to the issues that have brought 47 lawsuits from my state against this administration, boy, we see the world completely different set of eyes.
When you talk about these lawsuits, and I think back to the Obama era, and Texas sued Obama every time he did anything.
I know, I used to hate it.
People on your side, right?
I
People
know.
on your side thought it was a total waste of time.
I said, and then they're trying to secede. I'm like, what's this, Rick Perry? Yeah.
So what is
this 10th Amendment?
So now it's a good idea
now
to
I
sue
call
all
it
the time.
progressive federalism. It's different now. I know we're a bit hypocritical, right? Let's just acknowledge that out front. That said, we're not choosing these fights. We're on the receiving end of assaults trying to take away money because of our sanctuary policy, trying to take away our preemptive status as it relates to vehicle emission standards, going after funding for reproductive rights and access to abortion services. These are responses too that are completely antithetical to the values of my state.
Can you stop this administration when it comes to things like climate change that they want to do and some of the other things that's going on with immigration? Is that something that you can actually do?
Well, he's testing us. The answer is to be determined. I think we can win public opinion. I think the majority of Americans are on our side. We're not a small, isolated state. I keep saying to Democrats, if you want an answer to what we do when we're back in power, look out west.
Підніміть, будь ласка, його праві ручки над собою, опустіть їх на підлокітники. Оці датчики, які на підлокітник, сенсор рухів рук, під вами сенсор рухів тіла. Бог допомагає в тій серйозній справі, котру ми з вами тут разом робимо. У вас був секс з іншою жінкою під час стосунків із Роксоланою?
Ні.
So right now, your boyfriend is in that room and he's getting tested. And depending on what the results come out as, your relationship could end, right?
Yeah. Просто very. Я очень переживаю.
How many of your friends have had lie detector tests? Is it a very common thing?
Да, проходило человек 5, проходила тест, 2 проходили, проверяли свои отношения, так же, как вот мы с Лешей, наверное.
Іноді ви мастурбуєте потики від Роксолани замість того, щоб зайнятися з нею сексом?
Ні.
Alexei Vladimirovich and Roxolana Nikotina are contestants on Love for Survival, a popular Ukrainian reality show. The premise is to put a couple's relationship to the test, including with a polygraph exam.
І це прикра неправда.
It's a compelling train wreck.
Ну, я тобі вертаю твою бручку, мені від тебе нічого не треба.
Are you confident you're going to pass this test?
Да.
Чого ти улыбаєшся так хитро?
What happens if he doesn't pass the test?
Кинуть. А я готова взять грех на душу, я готова достать писюшку и отрезать, без проблем. То есть я готова. Это мое полностью осознанное.
If you believe that every country's reality TV reveals something about its national character, it makes sense that Love for Survival is so popular. Lie detectors in Ukraine are part of everyday life, not just trotted out in adultery cases, but in job interviews. They're so obsessed with machines that Andrei Volik was a famous polygraph examiner before he was on TV.
All of those people on the wall are people whom I tested.
This is your office?
Yes, it's our office. In total, I have 123 polygraphs. And you can see here different polygraphs, analog polygraphs, inking polygraphs, thermal polygraph. We have several major groups of clients who come to us. These are commercials, private citizen, and governmental structures. If to take governmental structures, corruption matters, loving or not loving country, so-called treason matters, national security.
The problem is that while lie detectors make for great TV, they make terrible truth-telling devices. The American Psychological Association says there's no evidence that any pattern of psychological reaction is unique to deception, which is why polygraphs are largely inadmissible in US and European court. But in Ukraine, polygraph fever has bled increasingly into criminal prosecutions. Irina Muzychuk is a psychotherapist. Concern about their growing use compelled her to read upon the science, and she's now one of the country's few vocal critics.
На самом деле не существует научного обоснования прямой корреляции между физиологическими изменениями в организме и психологическим состоянием человека.
If there's no regulation and the science behind it is shaky, why is it so popular in Ukraine?
И это надежда человека на то, что возможно узнать истину. И особенно в таких нестабильных обществах, как Украина.
Since breaking away from the Soviet Union in 1990, Ukraine has been one of Europe's most corrupt countries. Repeated promises of reform, like 2004's Orange Revolution, have usually met with failure. And while current President Petro Poroshenko has made modest progress, it's worth noting that Poroshenko is an oligarch chocolate baron whose name was featured prominently in the Panama Papers. But the real source of national paranoia is Ukraine's ongoing war with pro-Russian separatists. 13,000 people have been killed, and the rest have been gaslit by a non-stop propaganda campaign. You can understand why Ukrainians are desperate for a little truth. In January, Ukraine's chief military prosecutor even proposed weaponizing the use of lie detection.
Зараз в Одесі на базі одного досить потужного інтелектуального і наукового центру розроблена програма.
Anatoly is short on details, but he wants this new lie detection software to weed out Russian loyalists in the disputed territories.
You already use the lie detector test in the military. What are your plans to expand it?
У випадку звільнення захопленої території України, це Крим, і для встановлення або спростування причетності того населення, яке там живе, до колаборації, тобто до співпраці з окупантами.
There's an issue of human rights there because you're basically putting people through an analysis based on where they come from rather than their activity.
Тому що люди не можуть десятки років очікувати, поки держава дасть їм відповідь, вони винні чи не винні. І поліграф спрощує ці складності. І скринінг-тести, і інші інструменти, якими можна користуватися.
Only 70% of it will be accurate. Doesn't that concern you that there are people who might be found guilty who are actually innocent?
У нас є реальна війна за допомогою, яку проводить сусідня держава, використовуючи для цього гібридні форми. То якщо нічого не робити і зважати на відсоток, і на цей відсоток 30 чи 40% достовірності, недостовірності результатів тесту, то можна не починати ніяку роботу і чекати, поки воно саме розмокчиться оця проблема.
Наступний суб'єкт Сисоєв Олексій Володимирович.
The stakes are much lower on love for survival.
Do you think you'll still be cuddling in 3 months' time when you find out the results?
Не знаю. Не уверена. Да. Если нету измены, то буду его обнимать, что бы там ни было. Если измены не было, буду обнимать. А если есть измена, то пиздец.
Тихо.
Hi, I'm Christian Scott Atunde Adjoa. I come from the Black Indian tradition in New Orleans. My grandfather was a notable big chief, and I was coordinated as chief last year. It was really important to us that the record actually felt like what it feels like when you're in tribal spaces like that. I was calling up all of these rhythms. You know, I didn't specifically know where they came from. We have this bass rhythm that I created in Logic, and then Weedy came in and played Guinea Fari and Bow over it. We wanted it to mirror a trance. It had to have been Ancestral Recall because I've never been there. I really love the earhu violins because you're still getting the sounds of strings, which can be a deeply emotive thing. The earhu represents the voice. It helps to tell the story better because it's not purely a West African or an American story.
We breathe through instruments, one light wave infinite. We breathe through dissidence. We breathe through difference.
That's all Saul Williams. It's hard to put into words what a guy like that means to my community. Someone that is concentrating on making sure that the music that they create has a nutritional value. You're hearing multiple layers of trumpet at the same time. The top layer is almost completely raw. I was playing the horn in a way where I was really trying to get the horn to break on some of the notes in the upper register. Traditionally, the way music is disseminated to us, well, just to be blunt, is hyper-racialized. Like, if I asked everybody to visualize a Western classical musician, and then for you to visualize a trap musician, you see very different people. The most radiant version of a record that I could make would have to be one that used my identity politics as a means of illuminating the beauty in other people's identities. It's all of our differences in concert with each other that actually make us beautiful.
Sky is my witness.